off my seat, man. That's not even fair. Where's the exit row?
Am I on? Or do you want to turn me on? I'm on. Welcome to day 2 of TECHFEST. This is our AI day, so we are going to start with an AI panel. But before we do that, I want to thank our sponsors again. So we have Dean Dorton Technology, who you can thank for our luncheons. And then Oyediran Combs will be our video sponsor. Gibson Teledata, Lockstock, Forbes Mazars, Obvium, Entirety, Direct Business Technologies, the University of Louisville's Business Transformational Center, ASB Resources, Yellowstone, CPC, Technology Advisory Services, SI, Vonage, and Data Canopy. And friends of TECHFEST include Venture Connectors, Render Capital, SOS, and Canopy. So we are celebrating our 10th anniversary, so at the end of the day today, we will have music. Kathleen Hoy and friends will be performing from 3:30 to 5:30, and we'll have a little networking and cash bar, a little chance to unwind at the end of the TECHFEST experience. Okay, so we're going to get started. I'm going to take a moment here and make sure we've got everybody in the room. Yes, we do, that we need. All right, so this is our panel here. We're going to be discussing AI use cases for the enterprise this morning. And I'm going to have each one of the panelists do a brief introduction, and then we'll get started. Kelly, we'll put it down there, and then just pass the microphone back to me.
Hello, and a very good morning to all. Kelly Cohen, I'm the Brian Rowe Endowed Chair, a professor in aerospace engineering and engineering mechanics. I also have a secondary appointment in biomedical engineering, and accidentally I got into AI 30 years ago. And since then I've been developing and testing AI systems for aerospace, biomedical applications, and more recently I've widened my sphere of applications. Very happy to be here, and thank you, Dawn, for inviting me.
I think most of you met me yesterday unless you weren't here, so I'm not going to go over all that again. My name is Haynes, Cybersecurity Manager Global for AIOye Trends America, and also do some work with Trusted AI. Also do some work with Talk as a committee member, and also just do a whole bunch of other stuff, especially for the FBI. So I am the Midwest Regional Representative. So if you have any FBI InfoGuard questions or any challenges with getting certified, come and see me.
Good morning, Chris Reitz. I'm Senior Director of Enterprise AI at Anthem. And I also teach an AI strategy graduate course, and I consult with smaller companies, small to medium-sized businesses on AI education, strategy, and use cases.
Good morning, everyone. Jordan Oyediran here. I am a Data and Analytics Executive for ASB Resources. We work in the retail space. We also work in financial and looking to expand as well. I've spent time building teams, also collaborating with executives to make decisions along your data journey from being a data aware to a data-led organization. So happy to be here and to talk to you guys today.
That's great. Okay, so this morning we are focusing on enterprise AI, not generative AI, just for the conversation. And we are going to start with the basics of what is a use case, right? So a use case gives you an opportunity to think about how something is going to be used, right? How is AI being used in various industries? And so that's how our conversation is going to be framed today. So we're going to discuss in the beginning here some use cases to maximize store-level insights and personalization for retail, and we'll move through some other industries as we get going here. And this is going to be specific to the area of machine learning. Jordan, would you like to take us through a few examples?
Yeah. Absolutely. We've worked with several retailers. Can everyone hear me? Yeah, okay. So we've worked with several retailers, and worked on some very good projects. One that comes to mind is a churn prediction model that we built for a retailer to help them measure customers that were likely to leave. So in partnership with the executive team, we had to define the rules. First on what elements defines an active customer. So we did the data gathering from looking at transactions in store, regardless of where you purchase, browse history, demographics, just interaction with the customer care services as well. And then we built out a churn model that scores customers based on their decreased participation, frequency of visit, AOV, decreased AOV as well, and we're able to score all of those customers based on their likelihood to churn. We sat with the marketing team, came up with some specific ideas on how to stop those customers with targeted emails, local activities in the stores to get them to still engage. So when you know a customer within a certain period was likely to stop transacting, then we're able to do targeted emails. We're also able to engage with them as far as getting them to specifically come back to the store for, if it was a new flavor of a brand that just got announced, then we're able to send targeted emails to those people and then come back into the store. So that helped with engagement and the reduction in churn.
Yeah. So we're going to jump over to healthcare, because in healthcare you have different issues. You have regulatory concerns. And so now we're going to talk a little bit about fuzzy logic and how fuzzy logic in enterprise AI can really make a difference as it relates to also recommendations for you as a consumer, outcomes in your healthcare, and so forth. And we'll start with Kelly.
So, how many of you, raise your hands, have heard of fuzzy logic? Not in the context of the way Congress uses it, which is very complicated, but as a technology in AI. Okay, I'm glad that there are a few people. By the way, I'm the current president of the North American Fuzzy Information Processing Society. Now, why fuzzy? Fuzzy is a universal approximator, as in it can take any large number of inputs, features, and map that onto a classification or regression and outcome. And it can do that mapping to any arbitrary degree of accuracy if it's taught well. So it is an effective technique. Now the advantage it has over, say, one of those brutal AI systems called deep learning is that it is transparent and you know exactly the rules that connect those features to the outcome. And why is that important? Now, how do we as humans learn? Today, deep learning learns, you want to teach them this is a chair, give it 100,000 images of chairs. You see, this is a table, 100,000 images of table. Some of you have kids, some of you have nieces, nephews. How many chairs have you exposed to them till they figure out that's a chair? You know, we learn, hey, this is something that you put your behind on, you've got a backrest, there are some arm chairs, little chairs for little people, big chairs for big people, right? We figure it out. And then you take a kid who's figured out what a chair is in India, a chair is in Australia, a chair is in Africa, and you bring them here to the United States, here to Louisville, and you show them a whole new set of chairs. And they'll tell you very accurately, that is a chair, right? We don't have that level of intelligence in our AI, but fuzzy allows you to do that. How do we learn how to drive? We sit next to dad, or an instructor if dad is too busy or too anxious or whatever, right? And what does this instructor tell us? If you're driving fast, you see a sharp curve, slow down, right? That's a linguistic rule. It doesn't go and say, like, with the self-driving cars of Tesla, well, if your velocity is at 43.2 meters per second, and then if the sensor picks up a radius of curvature of 15 meters, then you need to have the accelerator pressed 0, but your brakes should be pressed more because you got to slow down, and so on and so on. That's very exact, very accurate, right? What do? You see a red light, you stop. You see a green light, go. You see an orange light, go faster, right? So we learn these rules, and it is having to use these rules, capture them, and then put that into a programming language to come up with this very true, transparent, ethical AI. Now, professors talk, we write papers, but a couple of years ago, one of my students decided to be an entrepreneur, took his PhD, went to the market. We had a contract with Air Force, we beat a pilot in combat simulation, the news went all over the world, and then Thales, a top 10 defense company, was looking for a true AI, which is transparent, understandable, and ethical, came here to our region and bought off my student's company and his software for $30 million and made him chief architect of Thales Avionics right now. And they are settling into the University of Cincinnati. They've got 5 people so far, all of them are my grad students. So there is value. There is value in what we do. There is value in linguistics. And it is a way of going forward. Now, we come back to healthcare, right?
That's right.
So healthcare, you want to be able to figure out, I've got a mammogram. When we take a mammogram, this is one of my spin-off companies called Genexia, in that mammogram, in addition to being able to detect cancer, it also picks up breast arterial calcification that then can correlate with cardiovascular disease risk. And so we came up with a strategy in saying, well, if we have enough data, can we understand extracting those features, correlating that to an angiogram, and then being able to advise the woman for another $25, same visit, same machine, same radiologist and everything, but just have the AI provide. Is your risk low? Is it medium? Low risk, you don't have to do anything. Medium risk, start being aware. High risk, go right away to your cardiologist, because taking a statin, doing some genetic testing can change your life, right? And so, how do we use linguistic fuzzy reasoning to establish trust? Your patient, the healthcare physician, enhance the healthcare, and we as the AI people. So, you have features, okay? There is a feature that we can pick up. That feature is then extracted, and now we look at the rules that interact with the type of features that we have picked up. If the feature is of a certain size, a certain color, if it's a certain capability, then we have the rules, and we train everything with the correlation with the angiogram. So we are right now have access to 3,000 patients. We have an interaction with university hospitals, and what we're utilizing is this transparent, ethical, trustworthy AI, because what we want to do at the end is to cut down on false, a false positive, which is a lot of anxiety. Some of you have done mammograms know that. It is a real pain, but worse still is a false negative, right? Radiologists today with mammograms get it 88% of the time. My team got an award in Sweden for looking at mammograms for cancer. We were about 96% accuracy. That difference is a mixture of false positives and false negatives. Now, we do believe the way we operate is we're not replacing anybody. But we give you a report showing you the features, showing you the rules, showing you why it is that we are doing what we're doing. Why is this diagnostic true? And then we save the time. Today, the radiologists are not trained to look for cardiovascular disease. They just do mammograms. But it's there. We don't have to create a new test. It's there. 500,000 people, women, die every year of heart attacks. According to Professor Esselstyn, in Cleveland Clinic, no one needs to die of a heart attack. It's not like cancer. You can, if you have early warning, and if you take the right medication, diet, exercise, and your lifestyle change, you can just live on and on and on, and die of something else if you need to. So I can really go on about this. I'm very passionate about it. We are now going through a round of funding to be able to take the data that is being collected, and the data which is mammograms and angiograms, which is quite rare because usually when you go for a mammogram, you don't also get an angiogram. It's not done, but we have that data for the same person, of course. And with that, we've got access to Case Western's cardiology, radiology, and oncology department to be able to look at that information and come up and annotate it. Once that's annotated, like we've done with the mammograms for cancer, we can then go ahead. We have enough confidence that we'd be able to come up with good results. We go to FDA, get the approval, and then university hospitals will be having to incorporate our system in all of their mammograms in about 30 hospitals in the north. And then we can start going about cutting that number of 500,000 to about half that amount. Now, I'm personally very excited about this. I had a heart attack in 2018. I almost died. I was in Orlando. My wife found out that I was sweating, so acting weirdly, according to her, which even for me is, a little off. She called 911. I made a big joke out of it, but that saved my life. The chances of somebody surviving a 100% widowmaker artery block is 11%. Now, women have two big problems. A, the husbands are not very observant. And two, the symptoms are not as apparent. So we need to tilt something in their favor. We need to cut down that number. And that number can be cut down. So the science is supporting us. It's a paradigm shift. Thank you.
Very good, yeah. Okay, so we're going to talk about some of the other efficiencies that we can bring to healthcare, particularly on the Anthem side. Some of you have Anthem health insurance, and so we're going to let Chris tell us a little bit about the work that he's been involved in for a number of years with Anthem, and particularly under Elevance.
Thank you, Dawn. Well, I love Dr. Cohen's example about how there's so much signal in healthcare that is maybe not utilized. There's a ton of inefficiencies, I'm sure will surprise no one in this room. I want to give a brief overview of the work at Anthem, and then I'll talk briefly about a mental model from my consulting that might be useful to folks in the room. So Anthem, Elevance Health is the parent company. We're a Fortune 25 health insurer. We have over 100 million Americans insured as our members, and 120,000 associates, not including offshore. So you can imagine there's a lot of overhead. There's a lot of corporate bureaucracy. So that's trying to push a transformation and shepherd folks through this large AI change it can be daunting. A lot involved with that, but so I just wanted to provide that for context. There are use cases happen to be large in this company. I will say that we're early in this process. So in terms of measuring efficiencies, seeing large impactful gains, it's still early. What I have seen personally, and I feel proud that we're doing this, is there's a lot of innovation happening kind of at the desktop level. The individual associates changing the ways they work, changing their behaviors, and ultimately adjusting how they might think about their work. And I think that's the really critical thing. So I just thought I'd start there. Some things that the company's talked about publicly that I can share are work in things like clinical interactions, customer journeys, and call center, things like that. Pretty straightforward use cases. I feel like I'm forgetting one, but predictive models. That's pretty common at insurers. We have a competitor here in town. I used to work there. Just to acknowledge. But so just thought I'd start with that's what's happening at Anthem, and it's both bottom up from that organic associate level, but it's also top down. Where can we save money? That's a lot of the focus, frankly. The risk with focusing on efficiencies is that you're maybe leaving some opportunities unexamined in terms of how can we increase revenue through product innovation? Are there other lines of business that we could experiment with via AI and sort of reduce the risk because we've modeled some future out. Okay, so that's Anthem. On the consulting side, hopefully this will resonate. There are some really common business functions that most businesses would have. Things like sales, marketing, RFPs, customer service. If you think about how common those are, a lot of them are kind of operational or the processes are well codified. The approach I would recommend any company entering this journey take is to look for repeatable, reusable, horizontal patterns is a nice way to think about it. Things that kind of cut across. So if there's a common function that sales folks have to go through some process for understanding a problem that their client has, if it's like, say, an employer buying a commercial plan, that can inform how we quote that on RFP. But it also downstream informs how we would implement that client, how we kind of roll out an insurance plan. So that's to me, that's been a helpful mental model to think about what functionality cuts across and focus on that to gain efficiencies on the implementation of AI.
Yeah.
I'll pause it there.
Okay.
So I'm gonna jump into a question we didn't have on our list, but trusted AI is so important in AI governance. So I'm gonna let DeJuan give us a little background on what he sees as the value of AI governance and trusted AI.
And I will probably be a little briefer than my compadres here, which is all good. I think the value that I see is, one, having some type of framework you're gonna operate within. I think right now, and I think Chris did a great job, you did a great job talking on the retail space, and you definitely did a great job talking about the use cases in healthcare. But one of the things I complain about my organization is having a defined use case. Everybody wants to jump into technology, and I'm gonna date myself here. I remember way many decades ago trying to save money to buy 4K for a computer. Now that wasn't 4 gig, that was 4K. And I don't even want to talk about trying to buy a disk drive, right? As a kid, right? We have so much access to technology today that people just jump in. As soon as there's new technology, they got to grab it, they latch onto it, and they really haven't stopped to say, should I, or how should I, right? So when you're talking about data analytics and having data architects, and you're talking about what your plan is, I think having some type of framework, and we heard yesterday a lot of conversation, I'm almost done,
No,
about
it was fun.
data classification and knowing where your data resides. Some of us are global national companies, right? I realize I've got to know where my data is in the US, and I've got to know where my data is in his Rolodex Excel, and I've got to know where my data is in Europe, and then how that all interacts. So we were joking with some of the vendors earlier, and we were talking about, it's like, wow, we've got executive action, we had a couple things in the US, but in Europe, you got the EU AI Act, and you got DORA, and they just released NIS 2, just the other day. And so we have a lot of regulations we have to take into account. So the implications of having trustworthy AI, I will ask the question, when we talk about trustworthy, that's a human trait.
Right.
When you talk about respectable, that's a human trait, right? How are we trying to apply human traits to systems that we're trying to be more human? And I think that's something we've got to take into account.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about transportation, because all of us are having to get on the road, and moving people is a big deal. But that takes us to this trusted AI piece too. So Jordan's had some experience with the New Jersey Transit Authority, and it would be interesting to hear his point of view on what AI can do and where he had to get everything in line first.
So just feeding off what you said as far as trust, in some instances, it makes sense to allow the data to make the decision all the way. But before that happens, you've got to make sure that you're aligned and you agree on the rules. So when we sit with organizations and we're going to write models, one of the things is we have to align on the rules that are gonna govern the models. Because the output, you can take action and output, I think Kelly and I were talking about that before we start here. You can take action on outputs that has bad rules. And the data is the data, right? You run it through the models and it's gonna spit out an answer and you're gonna take actions on it. So I'll going back to your
Yeah,
question.
right.
We did some work with, and we continue to do more work with New Jersey Transit. One of the projects that we did right after the pandemic had to do with just safety, and that's really important, was just train stations being crowded at certain times, bus stops being crowded at certain times, and people were so worried about being around other people. So we were able to gather information, run it through models, and be able to tell at what time, what stations, what buses, and that enabled the transit authority to put the right staff there ahead of time. So you're able to mitigate incidences before it happens, before people get into conflicts over just congestion. That led into more work being done with safety at stations, being able to predict when an incident is going to happen, and having the right personnel. So one of the things was, at a station, you would have a safety personnel there all day. There might be one or two incidences that they might have to deal with in a week. With taking data and running it through models, we're able to see that specific times when the likelihood of an incident would happen at a particular station or bus stop. And hence, that one personnel that you would have had bored, sitting at the station doing nothing, can now move between stations and be there prepared for when things like that would happen. Also education, lightning, all of the things that you can do in preparation to mitigate instances like that. One that really fascinates me is another trains. For trains, there are branches and trees that grow and block the train tracks. So New Jersey Transit would send a train with staff, takes all day, go down routes, look at those trees, cut them, and all of that is cost, right? Now you're talking about efficiency. So what we did was now long-range drones. So right after they cut those trees, fly out long-range drones to take pictures and images of that, store that data back, and you can now fly those drones every two to 3 weeks to measure the distance, the length of those branches. Now you're super efficient. Now when that crew is going out, they're not spending the whole day going and looking at measuring and seeing what branches. Now they know specifically where they need to go to. So you're cutting down on staff time out there and you're saving money. So,
What's
I could
the
share
next
some.
level? So the next level of that project, what are
Yes,
some
the
of the
next level of that project would be to now to get, yes, there you go. He's got
What
it.
did-
Yeah. No, yeah, I mean, the next level of that project would now be to get those drones to get out there and trim those branches themselves. But,
there you go.
but eventually we'll get to that. But for now it's efficiency that we're working on as far as doing that, and education as well.
Do you have any numbers on like percentage of savings or anything that you can quantify at this point? I was just curious.
Not that I can share
Okay.
off the top of my head. One that I could share would be as far as just ROIs. I think that's where you're
Yes,
leading to.
right.
It's just like fare evasion, for example. 25 to 40% of transportation companies deal with that. So one thing that we've been able to do is predict what stations, what time do we think those things are going to happen, and to, rather than have conflict, we share information. So that the transit authority will share information that there's going to be checks, you're going to have presence of people, authorities around those stations, which in turn would discourage people so that in itself, I think for the first year, we saw about 2.5 million in savings per month right away. Yeah.
Okay.
So let's just talk a little bit further about checks and balances and how AI can contribute in that area. I'm going to kind of open it up to the panel and who might want to talk about some of the things that where AI is either going to assist or has been assisting in checks and balances. Chris, maybe?
Some of the Anthem.
I would say for this that it starts with a good governance practice, kind of stating the obvious. And we've already touched on trust. Trust is kind of the answer for why you need responsible AI. It's because we're inherently giving it a lot of responsibility. We have to trust it, and so that governance practice really matters. And some attributes I would look for in a governance practice are that it's adaptable, because AI is changing so fast. It needs to be responsive also because of the change, and guardrails is a good way to think about it, not hard, fast rules. So in terms of checks and balances, try to be succinct here, but I would it was talked about yesterday in this room that the incidence of data breaches are increasing, and that I'm looking for a policy response. How is the government going to kind of oversee this, but also can AI guard against AI? I don't have a solution for that, but I'm excited to see where this leads to automate some of those protections.
Well, DeWan, you might have some perspective there.
I don't have, well, I think when I hear like the story about logistics, I mean, that's a great use case. The InfraGard side of me really is concerned about a couple of things. And so I will bring them up and hopefully maybe it'll resonate with some people here. One of them is the non-protections our seniors have. I don't know about majority of you in this room. You're probably targeted depending on where you are within an organization. You're probably receiving text messages. I even have people calling me in WhatsApp now, all trying to obtain a foothold in my personal life or my organization. So that's a major concern, and I'm looking for specific use cases around AI that can kind of help protect our seniors, because and I was before lunch, so I think I'm okay to tell this joke. I tell people all the time on the national security call that I'm on with Don, and I said, when you're a baby, your parents taking care of you and you're walking around in diapers. I said, and as you get older, you're wearing diapers again, but it's your kids taking care of you. There's no one really there saying, don't respond, don't buy a gift card, So that's one of the things that really concerns me. And then the other thing that concerns me is from an AI perspective, and I think you'll probably have some input on this, is that we also have to make sure that our citizens are bought in to use cases and how AI is going to help them. Let's be clear, you've got, in my mind, a clear choice. You can either be looking at AI for automation, and let's just be truthful, that means in some cases you're looking to replace human workers, and that's a lot of fear that our citizens have. Or, and I can remember it was Jordan or Chris who said something about looking at use cases that go horizontally. I think it was Chris who said this. Because now we're talking about augmentation, and now we're in the conversation of how we use AI and technology to enhance your ability to take the routine things away from you and allow you to be more productive and give back to the organization. So those are the two things. Now, as far as security, I'm just gonna be honest, our adversaries are using AI just as much as we're talking about how great it's gonna be for humanity. Our adversaries are using it out there to attack us. So not only were you stuck on governance and compliance and looking at transportation and retail, now you got this whole other thing that you gotta learn and try to figure out how they're coming at you. And depending on what circle you run in, some people will tell you, well, it's great for the offense as well, because now we're using AI. And I'm like, dude, there's a whole bunch, that's a whole ecosystem amongst the adversary. They don't own from beginning to end how they attack you. They own a little piece, and they give that off to someone else, and at the end, they all share the money back, right? Or unless you cheat someone, and then that guy says, I still got your data, even though they paid, right?
That's true.
So those are the things that concerns me, is how do we bring our citizenry along, because when they turn on television, they hear AI. It used to be pretty regularly, you were watching Arnold Schwarzenegger walking through with a gun, shooting everybody like in Terminator, and that's what everyone's fear is based upon. So how do we change that narrative and help people become part of the solution, not part of the problem?
I want to give you an example where AI human teaming augments human performance. You remember the miracle on the Hudson River? Right? So there, Sully Sullenberger, his aircraft was hit by birds. He became a glider. And he had some altitude, kinetic, the potential energy, and some speed, kinetic energy. And with that, the question was, where could he land? Now, it took him about 35 seconds to process. He ended up in the Hudson River. Nobody died. He was very lucky. But if there was an AI there, within 2 seconds, he would have seen 3 options. Hey, you got 10 seconds, 0 risk, go back to LaGuardia. You got 15 seconds, you can land in New Jersey. Okay, 0 risk. But if you waste more time, because you're a human and you want to do everything on your own, then you take the risk, because I can't guarantee you the sink rate into the water when you hit dots, and I can't guarantee you how many little boats there are around there to come and collect your people. I can't guarantee you that somebody would get very anxious, your passengers, and jump into the cold water and perish and drown, because you may not know how to swim. So while he was very lucky that nobody passed, I feel that human AI teaming with a good UI/UX interface can give you these options. How many of you are going to compete with a calculator to do the square root of a 25-digit number? Tell me. No, right? So the same way we get overwhelmed, we are limited. Pilots are human beings. AI together as a team. So the decision would be still of the pilot. But we can, in time-critical, safety-critical system, definitely save lives.
Absolutely.
I think one of the things that is also very critical and important is just the buy-in from people. In that AI is here to assist you, not necessarily to take your job. And I'll give an example of some work that we did with a retailer as far as implementing just RPA. So, publicly traded company requiring closing in 3 days. Something that was usually taking the accounting department 2 weeks. So we suggested bringing an RPA to help with some of the manual routines, right? You write a bot, it will run a process overnight, right? So most of the time that they spend is running access databases to do certain, and they have checks along the way. They run all these databases, but you're only limited to running for however long you are awake. And then you take a pause, and then you go to sleep, you wake up in the morning, there might have been an error, and then you kick it off again and you run it. But with the bots, they run around the clock. Initially, talking to the head of finance, suggesting that method, the buy-in was there, but now the staff were right away going, no, it's too complicated, I can't show it to you, because of the fear of, wow, if the bots do this, what am I going to do, right? So there needs to be that buy-in, and within corporate organizations, you need the leader to be able to reassure the employees that, think about it as a bot being your assistant. Do all of the heavy lifting. You still have to validate that data. You have to approve it. Finance, you still have to sign off that these are the numbers are right, because at the end of the day, if the bot writes it, does the reports, sends it off without you signing off, then someone's in trouble if the numbers are wrong. So that was how we were able to convince them, get leadership involved to say, hey, by the way, the bots are here not to take your job, but to assist you. Now you can spend your time and be more efficient. I don't need you sitting there spending days running access database. I want you to spend that time analyzing the data and thinking of how we could generate more income for the company. And that was how we were successful with that.
I want to add one quick thing.
Go ahead,
Chris,
yes.
No,
do you want to?
I will also.
To your point, which is a great point you raised, we also have to understand that whatever's the output out of our AI, we really need to look at it as a, I don't want to say an employee, but an asset of the company. And I think it was Air Canada, I think that was the airline, who was it Air
Yes,
Canada?
Air Canada.
A person reached out because they had a death in the family and wanted to get the bereavement rate and went through the system, and the AI said, hey man, this is the least of the things you gotta worry about. Yeah, don't worry about it. When you come back, we'll get it all squared away. Well, he got back, and they were like, well, we can't offer you that rate. And he was like, well, what do you mean? He's like, well, your AI told me, I was good. He's like, well, if you read the fine print on our website. So anyway, he went to court and he won. In Canada, in Canada, they went to the airline and said, hey, if you're gonna have these systems acting as an agent of your organization, you've got to stand behind it. You don't get to take a hands-off approach and say, well, that was that, and this is over here. It's almost as good as in writing. And so that was the ruling.
Or just you have to say, hey, don't take me too seriously. I bullshit from time to time.
Very real risk.
Yes.
And I just wanted to acknowledge briefly that there are some things that are innately human, like sense of humor, empathy, these especially with customer-facing things, and just our ability to make decisions and discern and things like that. Some of these things could probably be mimicked by certain types of AI, but at the end of the day, can we hold AI accountable? And so really you need a person being the decision maker. So the role, just kind of building on what's been said, I think the role of AI going forward in this augmented intelligence kind of approach is to convene the right insights at the right time, create the circumstances to optimize the human decision making, but keep it with the human. And then the coordination to say, Kelly decided this, and then that goes to Jordan, and to collaborate in this very dynamic way that's supported by AI. I haven't seen that kind of workflow happen yet, but I'm really excited for that, where it's holistically kind of coordinating a whole productive thing that we do, some activity or business function. Really
Right.
excited.
Can we talk briefly about, particularly going back to healthcare, on AI and privacy matters? And what are we maybe looking at as we know that regulatory steps will be taken, but what are some of the things that we will see, particularly around our healthcare data?
Happy to jump in on it.
Yes.
One thing that I think we're not great about is user consent. Do you know where your data is being used? I feel like this was already kind of acknowledged earlier, so I just want to kind of call that back. The other thing is, I think it's a privacy concern that the risk of eroding our sense of choice, meaning like, do we lose agency over time if all these algorithms that are involved in our lives? This isn't a gloom and doom statement, but what I mean is, if Amazon knows that, hey, people like you also purchase this, here's some stuff you might also like, and you're receiving this message going, yeah, I do like this, and then suddenly you're spending more than you maybe wanted to. What does that mean for, is that a road we want to be on over time? So just calling that out. It's not really a healthcare example, but I think that's a larger societal trend that we're going to have to tackle. And healthcare, it impacts healthcare too, definitely. There are a lot of huge consequential decisions that people have to make for themselves and loved ones, etc. So if too much of that decision making gets automated, or that information is presented in a way to kind of manipulate a certain decision, that's not good over time.
Yeah. And then I will say, does anybody here, when they're in a meeting, use the AI, to take notes? Yeah, some of you do. Yeah. The one thing I will say on the healthcare side is with HIPAA and, privacy, you've got to make sure that if you're in a meeting and you're potentially discussing anyone's information that could be tied back to them, you might not want to have that on unless it's your own instance of Zoom or WebEx or whatever you're on, because you run the risk of that being recorded and shared somewhere, and then all of a sudden you have a new problem that you that wasn't part of the call that you were all on trying to go through and resolve. And then I think sometimes we make things very complicated. I think on the AI side, you've got input, output, and then who has access to those modules. Where's that data coming from that's being collected? And on the output side, okay, where is it going? Who's it being shared with? Do they have the same set of regulatory requirements or the same governance structure that you have to make sure that that information is treated the same way in which you would treat it? Because at the end of the day, if you're the data owner, you're responsible for it and responsible for what happens to it after it leaves. And then also, how do you secure the information is collected in your models? And I know Kelly's waiting.
There's a project I'm working on at UC Health, electronic health records. If we could look into those and tie that into the emergency room, then when people come there for a cut, for a bruise, for a break, in addition to looking at the symptoms, we could say, hey, that's drug abuse, alcohol abuse, domestic abuse, you need a psych eval. Now, we can do this offline, which we're doing, whereby we clean out the data sets. But I asked the head of the biostatistics in UC Health, can we do this in real time? They're not ready. Why? Because we don't have the mechanisms of once you start letting AI from the outside interact with electronic health records, what leakage would there be? So we're still figuring out how to really come up and assist, because we've demonstrated that by having to intervene and providing that access, we can save lives, because you could be proactive. Being proactive can make a huge difference, but we've got to address this privacy issue. That's not my specialty, but I do know that's an obstacle that has to be addressed, because then you're very liable as a hospital to allow for that AI to do its work.
And I would just like to add, I think I like having Kelly here because he's talking about solving real world problems that we have or may not even know we have. And I'm going to go back in time just a little bit. Me and Don worked on a project one time for the state of Kentucky to look at human trafficking. I'll just say it didn't seem like there was a whole bunch of interest into doing it, but it would be great if it was resurrected, because now we see that we have artifacts and we now have things that we could put into a model and to be able to start tracking, Churchill Downs, when it's Derby here, it's trafficking season. I'm just saying, and I'm not saying that as a negative against the state, but we know what happens. What are some of the things that we can do from an AI perspective to kind of help collect information to be able to have some deterministic reasoning to determine, yes, we're seeing them coming in because we had a system we were
Yes.
designing. Well, I'll let you talk about it.
Oh, well, that's
There you go.
Well, this was a project we were hoping to get some federal funding on, where we could actually triangulate through measurements. So when you drive your car, you may not realize, but there are, on the big interstates, there are ways that Google and AT&T and Verizon measure what's in your vehicle. So how heavy was the bump when you came over it? Are you a truck? Are you a large SUV? So there's a lot of data that is already collected that can inform a project like human trafficking. And then the military transportation and how that all across the state, how is that impacted? So that was another piece of it, is how can you make sure that when there are different military deployment type situations that you know exactly where those people are at what point in time and so on. So a lot of this sensor space too can contribute when you triangulate it with other data, right? And so that project, we spent, about 2.5 years trying to move it forward, and the state Department of Transportation was supportive of it, but at the federal level, our congressmen and our senators were not interested in the project. But it is a project that now probably its time has come, because it's about 5, almost 6 years later now. So, a lot of these ideas that you may have had, in your own companies, maybe the time is now to resurrect some of those approaches, and now the technology will allow you to do things that you maybe couldn't have done 6 or 10 years ago. So we're gonna conclude our panel. We're gonna have each person give us a little concluding remark, something that is actionable that you can take away. And it's been a great discussion. I want to thank the panelists. So we'll get started here with Jordan with your closing remark.
Thank you so much for giving the opportunity to present today. Meeting you guys since Monday, I've been very anxious and looking forward to joining with you guys. ASB Resources is a very strong partner. Databricks, Snowflake, like I mentioned earlier, we're happy to be your partner from whatever stage you're in your transformation. From being a data-aware company to be a data-led company. And even with being a data-led organization doesn't mean you just hands off the wheel and let the car drive itself. No, they're still buying from leadership, and we're happy to partner with you to help you if it's just even identifying where your data lives. Make sure your data is secure, building warehouses, even if it's just reporting that we need to do with you, or building models in a more advanced phase to help you drive revenue, if that's the goal, drive performance, provide intelligence, any actionable insights that your company would like to go after. We're happy to partner with you. And I hope to connect with some of you as we break up to the smaller sessions.
I would say my advice to any organization approaching a large AI implementation or transformation is to start with your business strategy. That's your North Star. And it doesn't need to change because this new set of tools, being AI, is available. Your reason for being kind of persists in this way. And so being clear on what your strategy is, how you go about pursuing that, is going to determine things like, do we want AI to be in front of customers? Is that a fit for us? Is that on brand? That kind of thing. But it's also going to help you. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit, back office type of things that could be more efficient, and that's going to be pretty common to most organizations. But there could be a breakthrough that AI can help be the catalyst to capturing that value because of it's something unique to your business, some competitive advantage that you already have. And AI can help propagate that. The last thing I'll say is this kind of a journey that my company is on is significant. And a lot of humans are in the balance, a lot of lives. It's been discussed throughout this whole session today. And so I would just say, take care of your humans, look after them with things like change management and clear communication, transparency, but also keep them in the driver's seat. You're going to need them, and that's a worry that I have, is that companies are going to rush to automate things and then realize later, wait, our knowledge just walked out the door. We now need these people to actually drive the AI. We thought it was the other way around. So best of luck to everybody in this. I think it's exciting what's ahead.
Yeah, and I'm just going to echo what these gentlemen are saying. I would say if you're on an AI journey, continue to be inquisitive, continue to take it, I'm going to say, a little slower than maybe most would want to. But also, as a former talk board member, the one thing I will say is these sessions are for you all to make connections. If there is a question you have, reach out to anyone who's here. Find them on LinkedIn, make a connection. The one thing I don't want people to do is to make a small, significant mistake and make the paper. When you had 3 experts right here on either side of me who could have answered your question and kept it from happening to you. We put these things on for you to be exposed to people who are leaders in this space, and more importantly, leaders who are willing to work with you. I've not ran across anyone who said, I have my own consulting company. If you want to talk to me, it's going to be $250 up front. I'm going to need your credit card. I've not met anyone ever at any of these events that are like that. So don't sit in the wilderness. There's lumberjacks here. We'll cut the trees down for you, but you gotta reach out and let us know that you need us to bring the saw and the gear oil, right? So, all right, that's what I got.
So, I'm an academic. I teach, conduct research, and I do some service for the community. Teaching, I not only teach an AI class, but the first 4 lessons are dedicated not on how to, but why are we doing this? What is the big picture? How do we look into it from a responsible AI perspective? And that's gone very well with my students. On the research side, I look at quantifying uncertainties, assessing risks, testing. We have a few approaches to testing, and then looking at human AI teaming, which is in its diaper phase. There's so much we can do, but it's all about augmenting our capability given the advantages of AI. The decision has to be made by the individual with help from the AI. And finally, service. We formed a community called the Cincinnati AI Catalyst. Please Google us up. We're about 50 people, companies, startups, a few academics from the region, large companies like P&G, Microsoft, Amazon, and many startups. They look to us. They want to use us as a group, and it's all pro bono, this group. We meet once a month, and we have 4 sub-teams. I lead a sub-team in risk evaluation. We have workforce development, education, and assistance to new startups. So you're a new startup. You may not know everything. Generally, you don't know everything. But, some people think they do. And you can rest on the group to understand risks, to understand liabilities, to understand the legal limitations while we promote you forward. So look that up. You might want to create a Louisville AI Catalyst. Along the lines, we're happy to share with you how we got about it. We just started about a year ago.
Okay.
But it is creating some good energy, and the university, as of yesterday, decided to fund me to create a new lab called Responsible AI Testing Lab, where we would be offering services to the community. So I got resources. So you want, as a startup, you've got something going there, you don't want to lose your shorts, right? So you need to understand the liabilities. What we try to do is to assist you and test you by helping. My vision is do 2 years of exposure to the public in 2 weeks of condensed testing and then quantifying your risks. It's been a pleasure serving with my friends here.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Well, I hope you took